How important is
Fantastic way to interview, by the way. As a note to interviewers, to have questions lined up where they're.
So, hey guys, I have a very, very special guest with me today. His name is Rob. Rob runs the Chicago C++ community group. He's also very tenured in the space of quantitative trading. And I wanted to bring him on to not only discuss his career, but also discuss interviewing and the Chicago C++ group, because that's something that he wants to grow and I want to contribute to help grow. Alrighty, Rob. So, how about you take it away? Give us a bit about your background so that we can understand your education, your experience with C++, your career, etc.
Yeah, thanks. Happy to be here too. This was a lot. Looks to be a lot of fun. So I started in C++ right out of college. The back in like '05 or so was an era where it was a lot of arguing about like which language was best: C Sharp, Java, C++. And I firmly planted my feet in the C++ camp. For the first like 10 years, I think I was always the youngest developer in that community wherever I was at. So I did a bit of work for medical imaging and some bioinformatics for a few years, and then found my way to Chicago via a gentleman that I worked with back in Ann Arbor, Michigan, who was telling me about this whole finance thing. And looking around on like Monster and Dice.com back in the day, seeing the numbers that they were bandying about at the time, it was shocking.
This video is sponsored by me. I built this platform called getcracked.io because I noticed that there was a massive skill gap, especially in the world of quantitative trading and higher echelon interviews, between what candidates know and what they need to know. This isn't only focused on data structures and algorithms. I cover a lot of different topics here like concurrency, operating systems, computer architecture, etc. Here we have skill up questions and real world interview questions that focus on practical concepts as opposed to contrived toy puzzles. We also have real coding questions with explanations in case you're stuck in both languages like Python and C++.
Got in touch with a buddy of mine from college that was working for one of these firms out here, got me the interview. So I interviewed at a couple places and then found my way here right in the tails of the 2008 market crash, the Great Recession, and all that. So that got me into the finance scene here, bounced around a bit through a number of large prop shops in the Chicago scene. Ultimately finding my way to the next role coming up here soon. So I'm sitting out a bit of a garden leave right now, as a number of people are. And so recently, experiencing that whole interview process from the other side, which got you and I talking about some of this, because it's a minefield. I can't hear you. I think you're still muted.
Thank you. Yes. What got you interested in working in quant trading beyond having stumbled into it? What's really got you interested in it to begin with, and then maybe kept you in it as well?
Yes. Backing up back to the like medical imaging, I thought it was just an absolutely fascinating domain. Doing mostly nuke med stuff. Absolutely loved the domain. Learning everything that I could about it, and biggest problem that I had was that it was particularly toxic. Not a lot of money there, so that tended to drive, in my very limited experience, drive some of the tensions up in the whole thing. Tried out bioinformatics for a bit and then got laid off because of that whole recession stuff. And so I started to look at the finance domain as being a bit of a hedge, a set terminology I came to learn later, against bad market conditions and things, because I am personally a really risk avoidant individual. So this was sort of a way to kind of like set my life into a path where if the world was going to experience a lot of pain, then there might be at least some payoff to us on the other side of it, which I know sounds absolutely awful, but that's the reality of finance, is that things are typically going better when things are going worse. The tech problems are what's kept me in it, because it's just, you get to work with a lot of really cool stuff. You get a bit more freedom to work on interesting things and try out new ideas, because they're always looking for whatever edge you can get them against their competitors. So if you've got an idea as to what you can do to make something run faster or run on more systems more reliably and such, then there's a lot of good opportunities for that.
That makes sense. When people ask me when I was working in quant trading, what was the most boring time? The most boring time is usually when the market isn't moving. So yeah, as long as the market's moving up or down, there's always things to be doing, which is nice. If you don't mind me asking as well, where have you worked in the space? I mean, you mentioned that you've been in it for a while. Where have you worked in the space in terms of which companies? And then maybe as a follow up, what's maybe the most interesting project or group of projects that you've worked on? What do you like working on?
Yeah, so I started off at DRW, and came in there with the prospect of a GUI developer. So my early experience was heavily predicated around using like C++ and Qt, a lot of system Windows forms with .NET, and building that all out. And when I got there, they found that my experience with C++ in particular kind of lended itself more to the server side development, market data,
Sure.
connectivity things. So I left DRW and went to a company called Chopper, and was there a relatively short time before I hopped over to join Gecko. Gecko was the company that my buddy from that I mentioned before from back in the day was at, and so I went there to kind of join him. Basically, the day it became KCG, they bought Night Capital, that whole fiasco bit. And I was there for quite a while before they were acquired by Virtu. And at that point, I went to join another startup because I apparently have a high pain threshold for trying the startup world. It was at a small company called RKR that was primarily based out of Singapore and then London, and worked there for a couple of years before moving. We had to shut that company down. We moved that tech stack over to this new startup hedge fund that was called Aquatic. So I joined there. I was the fifth person on staff there, and was there for about 6 years before opting to try my hand again at prop trading. So hedge funds are a very different beast overall for that. So
For sure. For somebody that's risk averse, it's interesting that you're relatively amenable to joining startups.
there's something really satisfying about being able to wear a lot of different hats and stuff.
For
So,
sure.
as you know, I like to toss my head into the whole campus recruiting, college mentoring realm, which kind of got us chatting a bit. And there's just a lot of stuff to do in a startup, and there's always that hope for that like big payoff, strike it rich and stuff. But it's
Right.
often a pipe dream.
And as you were collecting all this experience, what was your favorite group or type of projects to work on?
Yeah, so I have spent the most time working on connectivity software. So what in the business most people refer to as a gateway, or so you're connecting to counterparties, exchanges, placing the orders, managing their lifetimes with those businesses, figuring out how to manage risk controls, the trade-offs between efficiency and safety and things like that. And there's a lot of problems to solve within that domain, particularly because a lot of these businesses you end up with a dozen on the minimum and upwards of like 100 on the long side. So it offers a lot of opportunities with C++ in particular to figure out like how to express commonalities in a way that can be reused without paying high overhead to
Yeah,
do so. So that problem set was long been my bread and butter after getting out of UI development.
I
That
see.
yeah. So
And I mean, you joined the industry relatively early, earlier than probably most people even knew what this space is. Why do you think the space has gotten so hot over the last couple of years? I mean, personally, I kind of got lucky making it into the industry before COVID. I feel like that COVID period, all of a sudden the industry blew up. So maybe tell me why you think the industry has gotten so hot and why so many people want to work in it lately.
yeah, sure. I mean, it is a fun industry to work in because it affords you so many opportunities through it, right? Like there's a lot of opportunities to travel a bit more, to go to other offices, meet with people. There's a lot of opportunities to work collaboratively with some other domains internally. There's historically the idea of having like a petabyte of data to chew on was a really weird concept, and now that's industry standard. Watched as technologies came in where people were unloading the TCP network stack
Mm.
onto specialized hardware, uh, and trying to take control of these things, kernel hacks in the operating systems, the all sorts of custom data structures and things to try and uh, tweak around how we're handling different patterns of data usage within the system. There's a lot of also willingness to send people generally to conferences to try and pick
Mm.
up whatever new tricks they can and stuff. So wherein I like to try to really engage with communities, it's afforded me the opportunity to be a part of the standards process for C++. So I've been doing that since 2010. Got involved with the meetup scene, now running that part, the user group, and yeah, so it's just so much there that's fun. But honestly, it's probably the price tag that draws in the largest crowds, right? Like it looks like the golden goose to a lot of people, I'm sure, but the but big tech seems like they're offering similar payouts now too. The whole thing is crazy to me to think that, like, has it been 18 years ago now? I was making like 1/10 of what I do at this point, and I was happy with that at the time, right? Like it's just it's a nice industry for that. It treats you most places treat you pretty well. There are
Yep.
some that run some pretty strong reputations for doing otherwise,
Yeah, that's definitely
unfortunately.
true. Definitely true. Catered lunches, Uber paid for, dinner can be brought with Uber Eats and stuff like that. So, yeah, the
Holiday
benefits,
parties and
unlimited PTO and whatnot. So, yeah, the benefits are
yeah.
definitely there. Okay, let's kind of move into something that maybe will reach a broader audience, and in particular, maybe junior developers. So, a lot of people look at this industry and they want to break in. As you mentioned, it's the benefits, the money, the opportunities for travel, interesting problems. As a junior developer watching this video, what do you think the best way to prepare or set themselves up for this a role in this space is?
Yeah, been thinking a lot about this in particular. The For me, so let me talk, kind of try and take this into two steps. First, talking a little personally, and then I'll try and maybe extrapolate more toward what I see of other businesses, right? The From a personal standpoint, I absolutely love campus recruiting. Love talking to college students. I've built a couple of different campus programs in the past, from the tech side at least, and I am always looking for students who can differentiate themselves from their peers in terms of their interest in the particular kinds of problems that we have. So really hitting on that interest level. I had to at one point sort of give up on the search for students that had, particularly for internships, had experience uh, to the level that we were looking for like C++, because a lot of the universities just weren't getting them there.
Right.
And instead, I started looking for students that I could test for their ability to learn. And so I actually, at one point, entirely reinvented my interview process in order to test for like teachability.
Mhm.
Uh, that is not the most common thing that I've seen out there. But if there's any hiring managers out there listening, I would absolutely love to, sell you on the process. If you want to hammer more into that at some point, I'm
Sure.
happy to chat through that. On the more general sense, there's this growing problem that I've seen, particularly since we kind of came out of the lockdowns. I think we talked about this a bit before, you and I. The scale of resumes that businesses are dealing with is making for a particular challenge that has created some knock-on effects. The Through all that campus recruiting that I did along along the way. I think looking back, before we came out of the lockdowns, I had maybe ever two people uh, pass on an offer. So, or like decline an offer that we had made. By the time that we got through the interview process, we had developed such a rapport that it was a very easy sell for us. The only
Mm.
two that I think we missed out on were people that we were just too late getting them the offer, and they took something else in the meantime. And I can't bemoan them for that. It's tough decisions. When we came out of lockdowns and I rebooted that whole process back up, I had four declines in one fall. And when I'm only trying to hire like one or two people, that it shocked me to the core. Like what is going on here, sort of a thing. And as we kind of peeled back the layers of that onion, we started to realize that people were coming away from this process with like 8, 10, 12 offers. They were applying to so many places that they had just a massive amount to choose from. If you talk to people my generation, this is an absolutely bewildering, confusing
Phenomenon.
right to have, because for me, anytime that I've interviewed somewhere in the past, I'd maybe talked to about 6 places total.
Mm.
Get through the phone interviews of half those, on-site interviews, try to have one or two offers by the end of it. And now you've got people that are getting through the end of your interview process with like a dozen different offers, and so like nobody's accepting your offer, and you're staying there at the end of it like, I just wasted all this time. And so then it kind of feeds back into the system of like, all right, now we have to process through way more candidates, and so we may be talking to people that we weren't really that interested in talking to before, and now we are talking to them, and then they get to the end of the interview process and you're like, yeah, well, we weren't really sold on you anyways, so we'll pass on
Mm.
you. And then the candidates are getting this feedback of like, are these even real jobs? Because
Mm.
there's like this, it's like both sides of this equation aren't really lining up on the realism of the offers themselves. And it's a really big problem. It's a tough one to solve. I've probably gone through close to 10,000 resumes from, different campus recruiting programs and things like that, and come up with ways to kind of quickly flip through them and see which ones are most likely to be good ones. But that is a really tough process when that scales up by like another factor of 10, right?
Right.
Like you have to start automating some sort of upfront filter that's just not going to be that good, because there's really little information to look at there. I think that's kind of where we're getting to at this point.
I see. And can you maybe give my audience examples of a problem that highlights whether somebody is teachable to begin with?
Yeah, so I love this problem. I I made it initially to go to the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign, because the school was notoriously Java focused in the education program at that time. I haven't looked at them in a few years and whatnot, but um, I went to a hackathon there because I'm a huge proponent of hackathons. At least 5+ years ago, as a means to meet candidates, because the opportunity to like have one-on-one conversations with them and see what projects they chose to work on, and kind of get past that awkward fake attitude that kind of pops up in a lot of interview processes. So go to this hackathon. I found this student I was really keen to talk to. Obviously, he had very little C++ background, but he had shown an interest in it. And so like he and I went to grab coffee, and what I asked him to do was and what the problem ultimately became is it's to first write a solution to me for Fibonacci. It's like, standard textbook class thing. And, don't give me anything fancy. I just want like
Mm.
simple, plain old Fibonacci, write out the equation for them in case they forgot and whatnot. It's meant to take like 5 minutes, right? But the starting point of the conversation. And then I'm like, all right, now we're going to set that aside, and I'm going to teach you 4 things about C++ you have absolutely no business knowing. Right. And so it was like template specialization, or class template specialization, non-type template parameters, using enums to get a runtime type, and using type defs to get a runtime, or using enums to get runtime value or compile time value, and then using type name to get runtime type and stuff like that. So there's these 4 features, and that was to take about 20-30 minutes, because going through and gauging along the way, like how easy are they to kind of talk to about it? Are they asking questions in response? Reading body language, how energized are they over this whole thing, whatnot? And we'd get to the end of that and I'd be like, all right, we've gone through this whole process here. I've explained all this stuff. What I need for you now is to create me a facility that would allow me to like size an array at compile time by fib event, right? Fib of some number. And the upshot there being is that there's all this meta programming constructs there that they have to kind of reason their way through. And I gave it to this kid, and I just had a really great reaction with him, and he got so excited about it, and he did pretty well to get to a solution of some sort by the end of it. And then he asked me to go meet his roommate, and he was like, my roommate will do way better. And I went to talk to that guy, and he did way worse. Like, he was really like, he just assumed he was going to have all the answers to everything, and because of that, he sat there and he just kind of totally lost track of like how to get to a solution whatsoever. He just was not synthesizing information there and everything. I was like, great, I now have like 2 really clear sides of this. I really want this kid, and that one I'd rather not. Right? Like, I will work great with this. I can take that and I can get him bootstrapped within a couple of weeks to start doing something well intern wise. Right? And I kept doing this throughout the years, and just every time I did it, I was getting really good signal on it. Even to one point, we had an intern class interview come in, and there was this young woman I had met at a hackathon, and I spent the entire weekend talking to her and her friend that were working on this project, trying to convince them to get into finance, because what they were doing was really cool. I liked the project, and I was thinking for her it was more of like a data engineering side of things. She was much more Python focused and stuff like that, but we still gave her the same interview as the people that I was trying to like target towards exchange connectivity and engine development and all that stuff. And I gave her that problem, and she had just like the most elementary knowledge of like C from her operating systems class a couple years prior. She knocked it out of the park. Like, she just looked there, you could see like the wheels turning, and she just synthesizing between these things and just put it all together and just replicated the syntax and grammar and everything just flawlessly. It was absolutely brilliant. She had no reason to do anything meaningful in C++, but it was very clear that like, this is someone that we can work with, and like we can help and train and stuff. So to me, that was like, that's what you need out of an internship, right? You need somebody that's going to be able to work with you and back and forth and get some value out of it both sides.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think something that might also be worth touching upon is, and we talked about this during our coffee chat, the 1 to 5 scale. So oftentimes when people speak to me, I ask them, what would you rate yourself on a scale from 1 to 10, where for your level, of course, where 5 is average and 10 is godlike and 1 is horrible. So what would you rate yourself? And you actually mentioned a couple of interesting points about a 1 to 5 scale where, and correct me if I'm wrong, even if somebody's a 5, they might not necessarily be the candidate you want to hire. So tell me a bit about that scale, how you see it. And
thank you. And thank you, because I know I promised you a while ago a video to put out, because I do have a YouTube channel that I was doing back in the day. I haven't put anything out on it in a long time, so that's why I'm always impressed as to how much content you're putting out here.
A lot of time.
I've got the script written. I just have to actually film the thing. So it's something I've been talking about for a long time. Right. So a few key points of this to be aware of. We need to stop thinking of technologists in terms of like a good technologist or a bad technologist. Like, the reality of the world is that people have their interests, and they have the things that they're just not interested in. And there are technologies that they will get really excited about, and technologies that they won't. The idea here is that first we need to stop trying to holistically evaluate people on like this scale. They're a good developer, they're a bad developer, and start looking at like, where are they at in C++? Maybe even specifically like Boost library, or this particular Boost library, if that's of value. How are they with pandas in Python? How are they with Flask? How are they with SQL, or specifically MS SQL, if that's of particular importance to you, and start breaking it down by skill. All right. So, like, as an example here, like, how would you rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 5 in SQL? That 1 to 5 scale is backed up by the literature of, like, if you're ever doing a survey of any sort, when you have a qualitative question, people don't extend beyond 5 levels.
Right.
You start to get um, negative results on it because people get wishy-washy trying to look between them. So there need to be 5 points in the scale, and I lay them out as this. So the first point is basically what everybody is. You've got a technology degree. You can pretty well sit down with something you've never done anything with before, with a tutorial, stumble your way through and get, Hello World up and running. That's where all of us are for almost every technology in the world. Like, I don't care how much experience you have, there's more technologies out there that you've never used than there are technologies you have used. It's just the reality that we live in. So it's a perfectly reasonable thing to acknowledge, like, I'm a 1 in that, right? That this is just, I'm just a novice, to put a term to it. But that doesn't mean I can't do anything with it. It just means I'm going to need my hand held by any and every reference source I can find. You move beyond that, you get to the point where you're kind of creating things here and there without too much hand holding, but it's probably not utilizing the like best practices within that tool. My Python looks a lot like my C++ did for quite a while. I've gotten a bit past that as of late, but that was never my bread and butter. For me, this is being SQL. Like, I've been using SQL for 15 years, but I can't tell you much about how this stuff actually works under the hood. I know who I need to go ask if I'm actually putting something critical into production that has some, high performance statement that needs to be there. And I'll go run it by them. Like, okay, I get the concepts about it. I can do, simple data queries and things like that. But this isn't
Sure.
generally what I care about too much. I got to, sleuth through some data, order logs and things like that. But overall, that's not my bread and butter. And I can be honest about that, right?
Yep.
Like, that's the self-reflection that we all need to be doing. When you get to that 3, though, that's where interviewers will typically laugh about this, because candidates like to put the term expert on their
The
resumes.
resume. Yep.
And
I've
what they're
seen it a lot.
right. What they're conveying to you is they've gotten to a point, usually with that technology, where they know they're sort of past the reference material for what they're
Yep.
doing on a daily basis. And that's a really key point to know about. And it's a useful thing to have on board, because those individuals can likely jump in and start contributing without too much effort. If there's some differences in what you're doing and how you're doing it, they may have to take a little bit of time to bootstrap up. But one, they've told you that they're interested in the technology enough to get that point. And two, that they're kind of capable of working with it up and down the stack. But they're not going to push you forward as a business in that. They've learned what they needed to do to make that happen. Not much past that. That is where I've kind of gotten to in my Python personally. Like,
Okay.
it's not my bread and butter. Like, I'm sort of like a high 2, low 3, maybe somewhere in there. I'll add in a little bit of self-confidence, self-deprecation, or whatever.
Sure.
But I've used it for long enough now that I can write stuff pretty well without my hand being held and create some useful things for production. Past that, when you get to that 4 range, those are the pioneers. They're the ones that are pushing past what was required to know for what projects or products that they're working on and stuff, because they're really interested in it. They want to go and figure out the depths of how things work, and they want to be on the cutting edge of whatever new elements of that are coming out, and maybe new processes or procedures or such and such with it.
Yeah.
And they're just really pushing constantly their skills and their knowledge with that. These, to me, are like the ideal coworkers. These are the ones that when you see somebody that's gotten to that point, or that has that persona, they're the ones that you want to go and ask the questions. They're the ones that are answering stuff on Stack Overflow generally. They are the ones that are kicking out those new videos about like, here, have you check this out. Contracts just dropped in C++, and we've got this early preview look at it and stuff like that, right? Like those are the people that their enthusiasm can be just absolutely infectious. I had the pleasure of working with an individual a number of years back that was that way for Git. Before that, I had just memorized a few commands. I tried to use it like SVN for those that are old enough to, have ever had the displeasure of using SVN professionally. But until that point, that it was just an absolute mystery to me. And I got him to do a lunch talk for our company, and he just demystified the entire thing for us. He was a contributor to the Git code base and did work in the open source space for that, and he was able to like just finally made it make sense, right? And that's what that sort of persona does for you. It made everybody around him better at that technology. Something that that was not a critical technology for the firm in terms of it wasn't giving us any edge in the markets, right?
Yeah.
But it made all of us better at our jobs. We had another guy, same company, that was that way with Bash, and he gave us this long explanation about how you could re-envision the file system along with Bash, and files organized in this way to like he had created an object-oriented model in Bash using files and stuff. It was
Wow.
just we were all blown away by it. Like, please never actually do this, but like that's really cool. I know like when I'm having a particular problem in this, trying to write some script or something, I now know who to come to. So that's what fours get you, is they get you those resources internally that you want to go use for when you're struggling with it. And if you're a business that is your product is like based on that technology, that's what you should be looking for that, because those are the ones that are going to push you forward and help you find something better within to some competitive advantage. But that begs the question then, like, what is a 5? I had to reserve 5 for this concept because it's out there. Book authors, professors, tools developers, they know this tool so inside and out that they've probably, and they generally do, lack perspective on it, right? Like Scott Myers wrote fantastic books and gave wonderful speeches or wonderful talks, but he would also readily acknowledge, he's like, you should never hire me to write software, because his whole point was education. He understood all this stuff to a degree that nobody really needed to, but that was because he had to do that for educating people on it. Compiler developers, if you get them talking about C++, they know this stuff to...
They're wizards.
Yeah, they have to be, because they're writing all the test cases for every little nook and cranny of the language, and they fuss over the wording and the standards and to make that happen. And that doesn't mean that they can't write code. It's just that, like, you got to be careful to make sure that you're not bringing somebody in that is going to just run over top of the rest of your staff, like creating things that nobody else can maintain, right?
Right.
So, I've known a lot of these guys that are really in that realm, and they're self-aware of that, and they create some fantastic stuff as a consequence of it. But you just got to be a little bit careful, because...
That makes sense. Yeah,
And they're
thanks for that
really rare.
explanation. Thanks for that explanation, because yeah, I mean, even in my community, I have people that I would consider more on the wizard side of the scale, and sometimes they go off and things, and I'm like, how do you keep all this in your brain? And how I want to keep up with you. I'm jealous, right? But at the same time, it's when you become too much of a wizard, it's just impossible for some people to keep up, and then you might not be as you might not be contributing to the team as much as potentially a 4 out of 5 would, right? And pushing the business forward in that respect. Yeah. I now want to also talk about what do you think companies are doing right and wrong in the interview process, and in particular, maybe in quant trading. Have you noticed anything that you think is worth bringing up? If not, we can go to the next question, but I wanted to maybe bring this up with you.
Well, I mean, I hate these like leading programming problems that are like ubiquitous now, right? I'm sure we all understand these things, and they're frustrating. They're often overly selective, but I can't decry them entirely, because for the issue that I was talking about before, where you just have too many resumes coming in, you've got to filter it down somehow. Like
Yeah.
there's real humans on the other side of that process trying to figure out what to do to not get totally swamped. And
Mm.
this is about the best that's come up there. So the consequence of that is that I think there's a lot of really good candidates out there that are getting passed over, but that's still sort of okay, sort of. And a bit of advice that I have in this space is that we on the interviewee side need to understand that although interviewing is very personal, we can't take it personally.
Right. Yes.
You get passed over on things that you would have been a fantastic fit for, and that can hurt, and it
Yeah.
can feel unfair, and it's a real bummer. There's false negatives in addition to false positives in hiring, and generally no one on the interviewing side is doing this professionally.
Mm.
Like this isn't their job. It's a
Right.
part of their job. We're never trained for it. I was thrown into interviewing within a few months of being hired for my first professional gig, and I got yelled at by the guy because I was asking him questions that were like straight out of a college textbook, because that's all I knew.
Mm.
I tried my best to come up with something interesting or engaging, and this senior developer like yelled at me because I guess he got really offended at the like level of questions I was asking him. I just like, that was a wreck. Like, what do you do? You're like
Yeah.
bright eyed and new to all this and getting yelled at by people one on one in an interview. I was
Yeah, I'd be
absolutely
petrified
terrified.
if I was new as a junior developer and I had to do that.
But nobody had training for me. And the people that were running the business have had no training in how to prepare their employees for hiring. Like, we're all just making it up as we go along, and that means there's going to be a lot of mistakes made, and that leads to a lot of wasted time. It leads to hurt feelings, and like the only advice I got for you there is, sorry. Like, it's just the part of the nature of it. It's going to hurt. It's going to be frustrating. It's going to make you, if you let it into your head this way, it's going to make you think you're potentially not good enough. But
Yeah.
just stick with it, because that's the best you could really do. You only fail when you stop, right?
Mm. Okay.
And yeah, so that's, I think we're really broken on the hiring side because people don't know how to talk about what it is that they want. And I'm hoping that we can improve that,
Mm.
by introducing some terminology into it, and with a little bit of word of mouth education, that maybe we can start to get hiring managers to think about what skills they actually need, and to start thinking in terms of like, this 1 to 5 scale, rather than thinking in terms of years of experience. I've seen
Right.
kids coming out of college that are clearly 4s, and people with 30 years experience that are clearly a 2.
Yep. Yep.
And when you start to like break it down as to like, what do our products actually require in order to be successful, and what technologies do we actually want to have a competitive advantage on and focus on, then I'm hopeful that maybe we can get back to a time where people can sort of self-select out of sending their resumes to places that don't match their interests up front.
That makes
And
sense.
maybe we can reduce this burden on each other to get a bit better signal to noise ratio.
Yeah, that makes sense. During my last 2 years in my previous place of employment, I mentored juniors, and I also took on the role of taking in and training up the interns and overseeing their work. And there was one year in which the intern came in and he blew me away. He knew more than me. He always produced. He was delivering on all his tasks and objectives, and he was clearly like a four in my mind. And then later on, there was another senior developer that joined, and I just felt like you said, like it was more of a two than he wasn't where I would expect him to be for his seniority. So yeah, years of experience to me, it's a false indicator, really. I think now
Yes.
with in the age of self-teaching and really most developers self-teach at one point or another in their career, degree requirements really should be out the window in my opinion. There's no reason you need a master's in computer science to be a competent software engineer. So
Yeah, that's a whole nother can of worms right there.
yeah,
Academia and its role in all this, right? The
yeah.
it's Yeah, I mean, my I've got a 13-year-old son, and he is just blowing me away with this sort of stuff that he's picking up right now, and some of this
Mm,
online learning uh,
exactly.
stuff.
Um,
It's
Something that I like to do, I mean, you've watched some of my videos as well, is sometimes, I like to come after work. I like to sit down in front of my computer, play some video games, take some call-ins, talk to some people about C++. And oftentimes people will call in and they'll say, oh, I want a mock interview. Let's talk about C++. And so I'll kind of give them that C++ knowledge round sort of interview. So I'll start them off with, tell me about what smart pointers are and maybe go into what a shared pointer is and what are the internals. And then if you keep doing well, I will go deeper. What's inside a control block, etc. How important is
fantastic way to interview, by the way. As a note to interviewers, to have questions lined up where there is no right or wrong, clear right or wrong answer. Like if there's many ways that you can approach the problem, all the better for your question. And if you can kind of slow roll into more info as you go along, wonderful also, because there's nothing worse than like getting a problem as an interviewee that there's like just a right or wrong answer to, and you don't know it offhand. It just causes you to shut down emotionally. But if you have like, you can give a little bit and a little bit more, and you can kind of roll into some of the things you don't remember. Those are the best interview questions, because you can come out of that knowing that you're not getting the job, but still excited about the place, right? Like you're like, I don't feel great about how I did, but that was a really great interview. Right?
100%? A hundred
So yes,
percent. And I really
thank you.
feel vindicated that you mentioned it, that you brought that up because sometimes I get people saying like, "Hey, CJ, the questions you asked are too vague or they're too broad," or part of an interview is also a discussion, right? So if the question is too vague, maybe ask some clarifying questions. Let's go back and forth on it. And I guess you kind of answered my question. All this was a lead up to my question, which is, do you think that the C++ knowledge round is a useful way to screen a candidate? Do you think that asking them those sorts of questions and leading them down that path is useful? Is it not useful? What are your thoughts there?
I'd say it can be useful
Okay.
if done. So the way I would use those sort of leading C++ uh, questions, and I used to just always do is phone screens, right?
Yeah.
Is to get a sense of what with C++ is massive, right? I
Yeah.
don't need them to know all of it,
Mm.
but I need to kind of figure out where their familiarity is at to get an idea of whether or not it makes sense for us to keep going. If they are using C++ purely for embedded development, it's probably not going to match up either to their interests, what I'm doing, or to the product's needs. But it might line up, like I might, give them a little prod, like, hey, maybe you should go try talking to those FPGA folks. This sounds like something that you're really interested in. I know you want to be in the space, but you have no idea what a socket is, or this, or how to operate, the difference between a thread and a process, or like how to spin those things up, then this is going to go really poorly very
Right.
quickly, right? And it's just going to hurt you and hurt me. And I do like, let's just see where we can kind of redirect you and try to end this amicably.
Mm.
Um, yeah, it used to be a lot more. You mentioned shared pointer. It used to be a lot more of an issue when you'd get people coming in that had only had known auto pointer, or
Ooh.
were adamant that they had to allocate and delete everything manually themselves.
Mm.
You're like, well, I can't. Like these people come through too often. We got to screen this out to start with, because this is just like, we can't spend all the time fully retraining somebody off their bad habits over the last 20 years.
Right.
But now, like, everybody knows what shared pointers are. And do I really care if you understand that there's like type erasure underneath it and what that means and things like that? Like, that's probably too much to ask. Now, a lot of
Mm.
interviewers may ask those sorts of questions, and they can be a lot of fun to kind of delve into if people are going, further down the path. They clearly know all the simple stuff, and you can kind of get into a fun conversation with them and see what they're like there. But at that point, it's more about personality and like
Right.
cultural fit, to see if they're going to be someone that's fun to talk to, or if they're going to be somebody that's just like begrudgingly going through the day.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
it kind of depends on how you use it. You can use it well, you can use it poorly. I think it's used poorly all too often, but again, I think that's mostly just because um, people aren't full-time interviewers. They're developers. And they probably went into tech. Sorry to hit the stereotype, but they probably went into tech because people skills weren't really their number one
Mm.
foray, right?
they're,
You get a lot of that.
they're not salespeople per se that go out and
They're not,
talk.
yeah, they're not. Yeah, there's the guy in the middle there to talk to the customers. So the engineers don't have to, right?
Right, right. Awesome. Now that we're in the kind of last 10, 15 minutes of our discussion, I wanted to kind of bring it back to you. So community engagement. And you run this Chicago C++ community group. I wanted to give you the floor to talk about it and then what the future plans are, and then maybe stirs up some interest in the audience and the people that will watch this video to attend
Yeah,
or
sure. Thanks. The blink. Hey.
no.
Um, so yeah, I did not start this group. I inherited it on the backs of a lot of the work of a lot of other people throughout time. We are in Chicago, primarily organized through Meetup, though we do also have a Discord server now. You can find the link to that on the Meetup page. The group has traditionally targeted for one professional meetup a month, sort of thing. I would say more commonly every 2 to 3 months has been the regular frequency of it. The gist of it is it's meant to bring people out and network with each other, listen to a cool topic, eat some food, try and build some community amongst the closely geolocated individuals, right? It's just always been the purpose of that. I have made some of my best friends through that. I have found my next roles from people and helped people find their next roles through there. We've got community, or we've got sponsors that come to those social sessions in order to kind of like help people that are looking to make a career transition, or maybe they're for one reason or another are in the need to find a new job, that they're there to kind of help out and give some advice or even represent them if they want. So like it's been a really good program. We get some fantastic presenters there, really world class presenters, and where I want to take it going forward is to try and see if I can't bridge with other user groups around the country. And the one of the issues I've been seeing with here in Chicago, we have a couple of really top-notch colleges in Chicago, between U Chicago and Northwestern, and even UIC and IIT, and there's a bunch of really good campuses in the area, but
Yeah.
they're all hard trek down to the loop to visit. And so we've held some events at some of the campuses over the past couple of years, and those went really well. And I'm seeing now that like what I really want to see if we can do is have like a unified weekly presentation of some sort. This is my goal. I'm grossly ADHD, and so like I tend to overpromise and underdeliver. But this is what I'm trying to do. Volunteers needed to help make this a success, but doing like a weekly presentation on something a little more akin to like a discussion section or a lab rather than a lecture, sort of a feel to it, but where we can then use that as a mechanism to advertise the social components, where we can then make give people a chance to like really go out and meet up with people around them, because a lot of the user groups around the country, US and Canada, that I've looked into have kind of fallen off to the sides over the years because they just don't
Mhm.
have enough people to kind of justify these large technical talks, but they do have enough people to get together at the bar or at the restaurant to meet up and talk shop and figure out what's going on in the area and stuff. So like I want to try and support those as well and see if we can't use some of the success of the Chicago group to help springboard that a bit.
Awesome.
So yeah, we should be having some presenters here early in the year. We're going to have a little bit of a change of venue, but I've got a few presenters in mind. Some of them you might know, but I need to get that all scheduled. So hopefully we'll be back to some really good regular in-person talk presentations as well. But I'm going to try and run both.
Awesome. And yeah, and when those happen, I'd love to announce it on my channel as well to boost engagement. And I'd also love to use my
Great.
platform, getcracked.io, to sponsor pizza or whatnot so that people have additional, not only incentives, but also that they're not starving at the event, or they feel like it's a nice, build the camaraderie in the event. So I'd love to
Yeah,
do
it'd
that
be
as
great.
well.
Cool.
And so I guess the first step for people to get involved, though, would be to join the Discord to
Yeah,
hear about
Discord is a
announcements.
great way to kind of hop on there now. Find us on the meetup, meetup.com. Join the Discord, and we're trying to kind of segue some stuff over to the Discord, but the meetup will always be there. I mean, there's just too much legacy connectivity there to people that it's going to be a very long process of trying to get people to join the Discord, but I'll be running both for a while.
Awesome.
So.
And then would you like to shout out your channel? You mentioned that you might be dropping a video. Maybe we can inject some lifeblood into it.
Yeah, it's everything C++. I think the URL is everything/everything CPP.
Okay, slash
You'll
everything
find me
CP.
on there. If you search for type name or Y type name, I think I'm the top Google search on that one. I think that's one of our best, which was
Okay.
a good video explaining like why the compiler was complaining at you all the time about having to stick type name here or there.
Okay. And then
Um,
I guess my last question is I get this in every video and it drives me insane. Is Rust used in quant? And how much is Rust used in quantitative trading?
I suspect so. Here's one thing that we maybe missed the boat on a little bit. What I've been talking about with prop trading and hedge funds and stuff, I've not talked at all about crypto, which is a
Mm,
massive part of finance at this point, right? Like
sure.
there's so many of my coworkers have gone on to work there. I suspect it's used a lot more within that realm. I know I hear stories of people using it here or there, but I don't know anyone in my network that is using it regularly professionally. That's
Yeah,
about as
me
much as I
too.
can speak to that.
That's the answer I give as well. I mean, outside of crypto, I don't see it that much. I don't know why it's taken such a hold on the crypto trading space, but it has. I'd never see it outside of that though.